Time for us to play a couple of requests. Well, the requests go out to a good friend of ours, Ed Castleman, and he's over there at the Brinks, and he's listening right now, so we're going to play him some country power, Leroy.
For music, music, music.
From Saigon, this is the American Forces Vietnam Network, where the hits just keep on coming.
Country power.
As the U.S. increases airstrikes and prepares ground forces, the Viet Cong ratchet up operations as well, striking U.S. facilities and other locations frequented by Americans stationed in Vietnam, including bars and restaurants. By February 1965, there are 200 U.S. Air Force combat aircraft in South Vietnam. Another 200 are positioned on aircraft carriers in the Gulf of Tonkin. A helicopter facility, Camp Holloway, is stationed outside the city of Pleiku. It will be the site of a fierce attack. February 7th, 1965. It is after midnight when 300 Viet Cong soldiers converge on Camp Holloway with AK-47s. They mortar the airfield, destroying 10 aircraft and damaging another 15. 9 U.S. soldiers are killed and over 100 are wounded. Later that day, airstrike Operation Flaming Dart sends 49 sorties of U.S. F-105s to strike North Vietnamese Army bases near Dong Hoi. February 11, 1965. The Viet Cong retaliate with a bomb attack on the barracks in Quy Non. 23 U.S. are killed and 22 injured. President Johnson responds to this so-called continued aggression with Flaming Dart 2, doubling the sorties to 99 and including South Vietnamese fighters. Flaming Dart 1 and 2 are more than airstrikes, but acts intended to force diplomacy. Johnson and the rest of Washington wait for Hanoi's reaction, as well as Peking's and Moscow's. The hope is to reactivate the stillborn political process begun at the 1954 Geneva Conference between England and the Soviet Union. President Johnson is put in a precarious position. The American people, so soon after the Korean War, are likely reluctant to embark upon another land war in Asia. The hope is that air power will be just enough to contain the communist forces in North Vietnam until peace can be found. A major airstrike, like the Joint Chiefs of Staff proposes, would be more than the U.S. bargained for. The hope is for enough military action to force the North Vietnamese to negotiate towards peace, not a major action like the one proposed that can provoke China into taking an active role in the war. Secretary of Defense Robert McNamara plans a gradually escalating air campaign, hoping the pressure from the bombing pushes North Vietnam toward a diplomatic solution. These carefully calibrated airstrikes are designed to be less likely to draw China into the conflict. The airstrikes will increase in strength in response to Viet Cong attacks in South Vietnam. Opposition in Washington fears the slow escalation will buy North Vietnam time to build its own air defense system. The White House only recommends measured and limited action, which is on display through Operation Rolling Thunder. March 2nd, 1965. As Operation Rolling Thunder begins, American and South Vietnamese losses are comparable to those in World War II and Korea. 9 U.S. and 2 South Vietnamese aircraft are shot down in the initial strikes, with another 7 U.S. and 34 South Vietnamese as the operation progresses. The North Vietnamese have a mere 35 Soviet fighters, both the MiG-15 and MiG-17. Unless China joins in with their 300 MiGs, they will remain overpowered in the air. U.S. air commanders are held back by regulations from higher up. All airstrikes require South Vietnam's participation against Washington-approved targets. Not only is napalm prohibited, but all unused ordnance must be dumped in the China Sea. Pilots, in attacking North Vietnamese vessels, must do their best to avoid hitting North Vietnamese non-military personnel. General Joseph H. Moore, commander of the 2nd Air Division, recalls early Rolling Thunder strikes.
I was never allowed in the early days to send a single airplane north without being told how many bombs I would have on it, how many airplanes were in the flight, and what time it would be over the target. And if we couldn't get there at that time for some reason, weather or whatnot, we couldn't put the strike on later. We had to cancel it and start over again.
Washington isn't the only obstacle to Rolling Thunder's success. By the start, the North Vietnamese amass over 1,000 heavy anti-aircraft guns. Many strikes are canceled or aborted due to the region's treacherous weather conditions for flying and lack of visibility from the dense foliage. Rolling Thunder is only intended to run for 8 weeks. It will continue for 3.5 years as the U.S. periodically calls off bombing with the hope that Hanoi will negotiate for peace. In charge of the U.S. Military Assistance Command in Vietnam, or the MACV, is General William Westmoreland. The general's ancestors fought in both the Revolutionary and Civil Wars, while he served in both World War II and Korea.
Well, you knew they were running the war. You had to play their game. You had to do what they wanted you to do. A lot of us always questioned, what are we doing here? Because, you know, there was too many regulations against us, a lot of things we couldn't do. It got to a point where we were only shooting so many rounds a day because there was an ammo shortage. And, you know, you just had to be careful.
Another thing we thought was interesting was that if we got engaged with the enemy, you could use up the clips in your M16, but beyond that you couldn't fire anymore unless you had permission for it. And a lot of our commanding officers said they just didn't want to deal with that, so they'd tell you to keep firing. And when you got back to your home base, you have to fill out reports for your ammunition to resupply it. And they would compare the supply list against the orders, and they said, well, you didn't request to engage the enemy. And the commanding officer's answer was, well, we didn't engage the enemy, we had target practice, and there's no requirement of how much ammunition we can use for target practice.
Perhaps Westmoreland's greatest challenge is adapting his traditional approach to war to the unusual one that is fast becoming the Vietnam War. March 8th, 1965. General Westmoreland deploys boots on the ground for the first time when he sends the 9th Marine Expeditionary Brigade to a Da Nang airfield. At 3,500 strong, these combat troops are far from just military advisors. North Vietnam sees the move as an open declaration on not just themselves, but the entire Vietnamese people. To China, it is a grave move to further expand the war in Indochina. Engaging the enemy is not only probable, but now inevitable. President Johnson, forced to acknowledge escalation to war in Vietnam, must decide how to best move forth. The National Security Council, in April 1965, makes its recommendation to the president. The result is a National Security Action Memo, or NSAM 328. It is an attempt to please 3 differing views on the building war. There are those who desire a rapid move against the communists in Vietnam. Then there are those who oppose an increased U.S. presence in Vietnam. Finally, there are those who fall towards the middle and desire a stable presence without significant increase in U.S. involvement. The president's decision, embodied in NSAM 328 and issued on April 6th, is a turning point in both the war in Vietnam and American history. he sanctions a modest increase in U.S. ground troops in South Vietnam, 2 Marine battalions, and 1 Air Force squadron, plus support, and he alters the mission of the U.S. Marines from defense to more active use, or offense. This change ushers in the beginning of open U.S. ground warfare, a strategy strongly opposed by the Air Force. The President also authorizes 18,000 to 20,000 more support personnel. He steps up non-military assistance and United States Information Agency programs and further bombing of North Vietnam. Wary of a public backlash, President Johnson has NSAM 328 downplayed to avoid any change in America's policy on Vietnam. He is also dealing with civil strife back home as racial tensions mount in Alabama. On March 7, 1965, participants marching in support of voting rights legislations from Selma to Montgomery, Alabama, are met with brutality by Alabama state troopers. Dismayed, President Johnson urges Congress on March 15th to pass comprehensive voting rights legislation to eliminate racial prejudice at polling centers.
It is the effort of American Negroes to secure for themselves the full blessings of American life. Their cause must be our cause too, because it's not just Negroes, but really it's all of us who must overcome the crippling legacy of bigotry and injustice. And we shall overcome.
Shortly after, the President must also address the escalation of the war in Vietnam, which will come in his Peace Without Conquest speech at Johns Hopkins University. April 7, 1965.
In recent months, attacks on South Vietnam were stepped up. Thus, it became necessary for us to increase our response and to make attacks by air. This is not a change of purpose. It is a change in what we believe that purpose requires. We do this in order to slow down aggression. We do this to increase the confidence of the brave people of South Vietnam who have bravely borne this brutal battle for so many years with so many casualties. And we do this to convince the leaders of North Vietnam and all who seek to share their conquest of a very simple fact. We will not be defeated. We hope that peace will come swiftly, but that is in the hands of others besides ourselves. And we must be prepared for a long, continued conflict. It will require patience as well as bravery, the will to endure as well as the will to resist.
Away from the microphone, Johnson allegedly tells his aides, "Old Ho can't turn that down." But Ho Chi Minh does turn him down. And the U.S. force in Vietnam continues to grow. By July, there are 125,000 troops.
Thanks for watching. If you'd like to help us produce more compelling historical content like this, please like, comment below, and share this video with fellow history buffs. And of course, be sure to subscribe to help keep history happening.